Hey, you've got yourself an audience cheering for you. Welcome back to the LCS. First of all, how's it feel to be back? And just like always, crushing news.
I feel like I'm old, man. I don't know. It's been like my teammate's like 19 or something like that. My old teammate is 17. I'm not super old, but compared to them, I feel ancient. I don't know. But we're still winning, so.
I'm pretty sure Afro is the oldest player in the NALCS. So you know, until he retires, you're. Oh, you're right. I'm stupid. What is Lemon? You're right. You're the older guy on your team, and you say you feel old. I feel. Anyway, sorry. I'll move on to another topic. Coming into the split, I feel like a lot of fans doubted you guys. It's a bunch of old, washed-up people, partially your words. And you come in and get a 2-0 victory. And I want to know, how does it feel to start really strong in the split?
Well, it's kind of a weird juxtapose. When I used to be on Cloud 9, everyone always expected us to be first, second, third. Now people are just saying we're going to be 10th. Nice. So, I play for myself, and now I don't have any expectations to live up to. People in the past were saying, we're NA's only hope at Worlds and things like that. And now that people expect nothing out of us, it's relaxing, you know? I don't have to, do good for people. I can just do good for myself, so.
Are you worried about the pressure of doing really poorly, though, and disappointing your fans? Or is that not, one of the pieces of pressure here?
Well, we can't really disappoint them if they expect us to be 10th, you know? So I'm not too concerned about that. I don't think we'll be 10th. I think we're actually a pretty good team. We just started practice, a week or two ago, just barely. We just got our computers and everything, so we're a bit behind on things. But I'm confident as time goes on, we'll become better and better.
I'm glad to hear that. I got the chance to hear you because this is a much smaller studio. I was getting mic'd up for the interview, and I hear you yelling to your team during the team fights, and you're just as vocal as ever and just as communicative, and that's great. You feel like your skill set is just as strong as ever. You're still just as sharp a player as back in the old C9 crushing everyone days?
Right. So the level 2 game, the Malzahar thing kind of happens sometimes, I didn't really expect to die. The minions did 700 damage to me or something like that. So that was kind of my mistake, but I feel like I've worked on my laning phase a lot, and that's what a lot of people gave me crap about. And I think I've kept my shot calling skills, and I think I've gotten better as a player. So, if I can improve upon those two things as a whole and the team works together, I think we'll just be a really good team, actually.
Well, it's good to hear. As you said, it's only been a couple weeks together. You think you will climb up high. Thank you very much for the interview. Congratulations on the win. We'll see more of you throughout the week. Let's toss it over to the analysts.
Thank you very much, Freak. Hi, no stranger to victories, but finding a victory on a brand new team here for FlyQuest. They're starting off their season with a 2-0 victory. And as Hai mentioned there in that interview, the expectations for this roster coming in, very little. Most people saying they will be the 9th or 10th place team in the league. Of course, Envy, without the full roster, is not the most formidable of opponents, but to have that solid 2-0 under their belt to kick off the season will feel good.
Yeah, it's really important that they came out and showed that they can beat a weakened Envy, which they did, and they addressed some concerns and not some others. The game 2, they had a relatively weak early game, losing some lanes, but you did see a lot of good shot calling, like Hai said. They had a couple good rotations to the top side to get a kill on the tank and start trading objectives. They came back in the game from down, which is something that old C9 was always great at, and so you see that they do have the shot calling. There's still those concerns about individual skill matching up well.
Well, let's talk about how they got into a bit of a hole there at the beginning of game 2, starting in Champion Select. I mean, we saw target bans going towards the jungle here out of Envy, relegating Moon down to the Graves as his pick.
Yeah, it's a little weird to think about where you have your mid laner playing jungle and then you heavily target the other jungle.
Right.
It doesn't seem like the most obvious strategy on paper, but Moon did have a really good game 1, and I think they were looking to just stabilize in the early game and hope that they can maybe snowball off lanes, which they kind of did. So in that sense, I did like that strategy where they are forcing Moon off an early game playmaking champion and going on to the Graves eventually. I think that does make sense. You're out of early game options to compete with the Elise, really, so you go for something that scales a little bit harder.
Right, yeah, with the 2 bans and the pick in the first phase of Junglers, followed by 2 more bans coming from Envy towards the jungle, that essentially is saying, Moon, who do you think is the 6th best jungler? He goes with Graves. As you mentioned, you now have Elise up against Graves, which is a very big disparity in early game pressure, and it went in favor of Envy. Our first replay is going to be in the bot lane, 3-for-0 for Envy here, and a lot of this comes from that early skirmishing power of the Elise.
Right, and you see that basically 2 fights break out at the same time. Moon's going to have to fight Ninja while the bot lanes get fighting, and it was really good outplay by Ninja actually on Moon to dodge the Q damage, and then the LCK, nice roam, able to follow up, clean the kill up on top of Moon, and then the bot lane won their 2v2. So you get a quick 3-for-0 out of nowhere, and that starts snowballing the game. And like I said, out of nowhere, huge CS lead for Apollo during this game.
Exactly, yeah. Apollo had a bunch of kills stacking up early on that Varus, and this is where, the test came for FlyQuest. And in a sense, specifically high. When it comes to Phoenix logo popping up behind us, but you
Ignore
know,
that.
yeah, with high in his shot calling too, this is where it's like, okay, if he's really going to live up to the name of this shot caller, this great shot caller that he once was, when you're playing from behind is when it's even more important. And we saw the classic decisive Baron call from high come 27-50 into the game off of just a single kill. Boom, let's get to the Baron, let's make this happen.
Right, and I think that's really the most important thing is that a lot of teams can play from ahead. It's not as hard, but when you're able to win fights like this from behind and then know how to like not just win that fight but get the next objective is super important. And they're able to do that here where they sit in the brush, they get a fight that starts off pretty well for them, they clean up a couple kills, and they're able to just get, Seraph. They kill him off too.
This
takes
forever, first of all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, getting the kill on the Elise, we saw Moon getting into the backline while the Altec hit the arrow on Ashe on the backline, which was pretty clutch in that fight to kind of
sneak it
stop
through.
the damage.
Yeah. So once they got that and they turned to the Baron, I mean, that's the kind of call that you need to really come back in the game, because winning that fight doesn't win you the game. Getting the Baron does. And understanding that is something that High does extremely well, knowing exactly what they need and getting that done. And he even played team fights pretty well. Past that point, he had a really nice, package play into the bot lane. So all around, like a really good game by them after that initial problem in the early game where they give up the kills and they're falling behind in lane and all that.
So let's talk about that, though, because that has to be a concern. Yes, it is great that they demonstrated the fact that they can dig their way, or rather climb their way out of a deficit and come out with a win. But the fact that they were in a deficit is a concern in and of itself, which is that, okay, if our early games aren't strong and we hand those same 3 kills over to Cloud9, to CLG, to Team Liquid, they might actually be able to close out the game without that Baron fight that Envy lost.
Right, and you think that maybe even the early game could go worse. I mean, you don't want to look too much into a single one bad early game play, because it wasn't that bad in the first game, their early game. So you don't want to read too into it, but that was the concern with this team coming in, and I wouldn't say that this series really cleared up those concerns.
Right, absolutely. Let's move on to player of the game. It's going to go to Moon this time around. Specifically for the fact that 5 junglers are taken off the table, you're relegated to Graves. And although, yes, the early game didn't go super swimmingly for FlyQuest, he, as an individual, after he established a couple items, actually started to step up here.
Yeah, I mean, he was put in a tough spot given how the draft went, and he did really well for that. He farmed up early game. Once a play went wrong, he didn't keep trying to force things. They made a couple smart plays, and then that team fight at the Baron that turned it all around, he was basically 1v3ing the backline of Envy and just not being too afraid, willing to put the damage out and following up on that arrow that we talked about that managed to get through the team. So all of that combined with how he finished the game, once again, that bot lane fight, he picked up a couple kills as well. So just a great performance all around, given how heavily he was targeted in the draft.
Granted, it's only 2 games, but it's great to see Moon as a player come out here and put up 2 relatively solid performances. I mean, he had pretty good early control with the Lee Sin game in game 1, and then here in game 2, knowing that I have to play a completely different style and farm up to the late game. Nice to see a player that was kind of the target of a lot of criticism last year open up his season here with a much more solid start.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing where I don't think he's ever been in a great situation for his team. I think, Energy, there were obvious problems in the synergy with them.
Yep.
What happened with Liquid, he was basically just shoved into that role out of nowhere because the team was falling apart, basically.
Right.
So I don't think it's ever been this kind of thing where he's on a team where everyone understands each other and they get along. And you see that maybe with FlyQuest and great leadership coming from High and the rest of the veterans on that team, that he's able to finally transition and reach his full potential.
All right, well, FlyQuest off to a great start here in the NALCS with their first series victory of the season. We're going to reset for our next series with the revamped Team Dignitas taking on Phoenix 1. Don't go anywhere. The NALCS returns in just a few minutes.
Wait, 11, is this true?
Wait, what?
Wait. Did Sneaky sneeze on you? Like,
Yeah.
He sneezed on him like 4 times and his lemon just like exploded.
I mean, legit the first 4 times I'm like, can you come here? And he just never does.
Ooh, High actually has to watch out for those Voidling damage. This is an interesting development. Flash forward, Alex needs one more! First blood, Envy's mid laner. Still the 1v1 off the side. Altec killed first. Apollo's able to grab that kill. It's going to be Moon number 2. Lemon number 3. Fly High right in the middle, having to fly away. Altec now jumped on Apollo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shoots him down.
Malzar's dead. We're fine. Fight.
It's going to be Apollo second. Altec's got the kill. Goodbye, Sarah. Goodbye, Envy. That's what I'm talking about. And they are going to take it 2-0.